Alex Matthews glanced at his wristwatch, impatient for the tedious speaker to finish so he could make his way out of the crowded room and get on with some difficult business. He was on the third floor of the Hotel Baltshug Kempinski, in a large, soulless room facing a distant podium where a Russian speaking passable English was coming to the excruciating end of the conference's last speech. Matthew sat in the back, conscious of the short time before he was to meet an old adversary. The prospect of the 6 p.m. farewell cocktail hour brought a parched restlessness to the room, and a few attendees escaped to the bar. The fierce heat of the day had begun to temper, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows on Red Square, visible to anyone in the room who preferred the view across Moscow River. Matthews had delivered the keynote speech to the Moscow Trade Organization, offering wisdom on how to invest without breaking securities laws. Later speakers gave advice on VAT strategies and risk management of tax loopholes, but the highlight, and the best-attended talk, after his own, had been on business ethics, Gogol's dilemma, when a nose is not a nose. Matthews was dressed casually in the crowd of young, impeccably attired British, French, and German attendees, having nothing to prove at his age, and no one he needed to impress. He was an ordinary middle-aged man who'd left behind the vanity of youth and was comfortable being a slightly older, slightly grayer, slightly heavier version of his younger self. His hair had thinned and his waist had thickened from rich dinners with investors on his demanding travel schedule between Washington, D.C. and Moscow. He preferred that age made him invisible to younger attendees, and he owed his talent for going unnoticed to his previous career in the CIA, which had trained him to slip into a restaurant without catching the waiter's eye. Matthews took the handwritten note passed to him by his colleague. Mikhail Sorkin was his Russian lawyer and an old high school friend. He wore a bespoke Savile Row suit with a silk tie, and his long silver hair was swept back on his head like an orchestra conductor. They had forged a teenage friendship during the Soviet Union's last days, drinking vodka, smoking Marlboro Reds, and reading romantic poetry out loud as their rowboat drifted on the Moscow River. Sorkin led the Moscow practice of the London firm of Hammett and Hammett P.C. His tie matched a crisp yellow pocket square, the splash of color accenting his charcoal suit. He had the firm, respectable manner of a lawyer cautioning his client. Sorkin had written 2 words in bold block letters on the back of the day's program, copying them from a cell phone text: tax audit. Trinity Capital is in full compliance, Sorkin said, dismissing the concern. We haven't bribed anyone, so no one has asked for a bribe. Sorkin said that it was a routine matter, and there was no reason to be concerned, but Matthews had succeeded with his Russian investments because he was always concerned. The 2 men had a brief, whispered conversation on how to address the matter, and then light clapping signaled the end of the speaker's remarks and the end of the conference. Handle it, Matthews said. I'll meet you in the bar in an hour. I have an errand to run.